talking to myself too.
Well, Buford said we're live now, and we were talking about Eddie to speak up for Facebook, so we'll get him yelling. Use your outside voice, that is, like you're yelling at your cow. All right, we're starting on a new book this morning. I don't know now what's in just this teacher's book or what's in y'all, so I wanted to read you. Did y'all have a paragraph at the very beginning that says introduction? That tells you a little bit about it. I like this, in the very last sentence, and it says, followers of Christ are holy, chosen, tried, humble, and growing in grace. In addition, they have faith in his promise that he will come again and are living in expectation of that event. And I think that was a good compact, statement of what it is to be a believer.
It's
That's not
very, very.
yeah,
okay.
it's the very first year book.
The introduction of the.
Yeah, the list. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Usually there's a whole page of introduction that tells like where they're getting the lessons and what they're doing and stuff. But I just thought that was a real good statement about what Christians should possess and what they're looking, and what the hope is looking forward to. So we're going to start this morning on the book of James. We went all through the book of Hebrews, and I thought as we go through these books of the Bible, because I hope you all aren't like me, but I can't remember a lot now. I just, I watch a movie over and over and can't see it. Watch it again, and I think I've never seen it. But as we go through these books and we learn and we look at them in depth, hopefully, when it comes around that a life situation matches up to what we've heard, if Buford's preaching on that book or something, that we'll have a little bit of deeper understanding of just what he's saying, what Jude is, for instance, last week we went over the short book of Jude, so we kind of have some understanding when we hear that and can apply it. So we're going to look this morning, starting in the book of James. And as we see, James is another of Jesus' brothers. And there were a couple of places in Corinthians and in Acts that it referred to James as exactly who he was, as the half-brother of Jesus. And it also, as we learned from Jude last week, during Jesus' physical life here on earth, James was not a believer either. They just thought that Jesus was a man, that he was a brother. And sometimes, as we know, especially with our brothers, they might think themselves to be something that they're really not. And I'm sure, to these people, probably it was, he's saying he's the Messiah, but until they saw something of real proof, they didn't believe. And I wanted to read, speaking of that, in Mark chapter 6. And I'm going to have to have y'all hang on for a minute. Oh, no. Yeah, well, I'll try to read it. Let's see if I can. Are they just regular?
They're low.
I don't think I can read the rest of it. Okay, Mark chapter 6, and I'm going to start in verse 1. And this Bible has little subtitles in it, and it's without honor in his own country. And I know you have all heard this before, but it never hurts if you like me to hear things 25 times. Says speaking of Jesus, then he went out from there and came to his own country, and his disciples followed him. And when the Sabbath had come, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many hearing him were astonished, saying, where did this man get these things, and what wisdom is this in which is given to him, that such mighty works are performed by his hand? So he's out in the synagogues with the leaders that know these words that he's preaching, and they're really puzzled because it's like, who is he and how does he know all he's preaching? And then in verse 3 it says, is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James, Jose, Judas, and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us? So they were offended at him. So even though he was saying stuff that was amazing, that how did he know this stuff? Because he was the brother, the carpenter's son, and nothing in their eyes, that were offended at him for doing it. And it says, but Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country, among his own relatives, and in his own home. So, he recognizes very quickly that there's no regard for him or what he knows among his own people. It says in verse 5, now he could do no mighty work there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. Then he went about the villages in a circuit teaching. So it's, in other scripture where we read where he's thinking he's in going about healing. It says he heals many people as he goes, and there's many people's lives that are changed by just his passing through that area. But we see when he's in his own country, it says that he went about and healed a few. So, it was to their loss. And as we study, we'll see why this verse wasn't in our lesson, but it ties along with our lesson and what we're reading. So, we're going to start with James. And as we said, he's his brother. He wasn't a believer until after Jesus' death and the Pentecost that, Jesus came and made himself seen. And then some of these family members that we see that didn't believe became believers of who he was. So we're in James 1, starting in verse 1 through 16. It says, James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted, but the rich in that he is made low, because as the flower of the grass he shall pass away. For the sun is no sooner risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth, and the grace of the passion of it perisheth. So also shall a rich man fade away in his ways. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. Do not err, my beloved brethren. So he's covered a lot of ground in this text that he's writing about, about growing as a Christian and part of what we're going to be faced with, but also part of the danger that we're going to come and the decisions that we have to make. And on my lesson background, I don't think you had it in your book, and this is speaking of the Jewish people. It says, They were in danger of sinking in despondency, of murmuring and complaining, and of charging God as the author of temptation and sin. Yet the loving, sympathetic heart of James wishes them joy, even in the time of their tribulation. So we talked before, most of these letters are written when something's going on in the churches of that time. And we know that we've studied in the past that the churches have had a lot of troubles. They're new, they're bucking against the Jewish tradition. There's Roman law that's, they have to live under. They're being asked to believe, on Jesus Christ and not on the Jewish laws that they were learned. We learned last week that there's people speaking in and wanting to be a leader in these churches and the things going on, but they're really taking the words and making it what they want it to be. So in the midst of all this, the people are getting real discouraged. And we know because sometimes the same thing happens to us. We get real discouraged if things aren't going our way. And it would be easier if we made up our own rules and could live by them. But, we know if we live in time that actually doesn't work to do that. So it starts out, he's saying, James, a bondservant of the Lord Jesus, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. And the writer in here was talking about that he didn't know if it was the people of the current time or if he was talking to the people that had been taken off during the Babylonian raids and taken, because we know the Jewish people were scattered in all the nations right now. So, the ones that especially weren't around Jerusalem were having issues because they were in countries and were being indoctrinated with other faiths or other beliefs that they had. It says James here is addressing those Jews who have embraced the Christian faith. It was the desire of this apostle's heart that those who were scattered abroad might be comforted. So he's looking at his people as a whole that when Jesus had told us them to take the word and take it to all the brethren. So he's writing this not only to the people there, but to all the brethren. It says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. How do y'all count it joy when you fall into temptations? When things happen, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, isn't it? It's maybe when you fall for the temptation, it might look like joy in front of you. But I always said you never hear of somebody having a good drug problem. And you wonder why people, because it's never characterized as a good problem. And, why would you start when you see the outcome of a lot of things? But we do the same. There's other issues that, we know the outcome, but we step our foot right in the snare anyway because it's fun or whatever. He says, especially should he rejoice that he is counted worthy to suffer for Christ. Okay, and it says here the word is used in a sense of trials such as persecution, poverty, or calamities of any kind. So these are things that he's speaking about in here, not necessarily the problems that we brought on ourselves. There's some problems we have in life that we step out there and we kind of know that it's a potential problem, but we're stubborn and hard-headed and do it anyway. And then there's trials in life that come up. I can't help but it's the whole thing like these Ukrainian people. That that as a single person, they didn't ask for any of this, and these are trials that they're going through that they had no. You can't say I blame you because you shouldn't have lived there. To start, this is something that was unavoidable on their part, and it's what he's looking at. It says, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. So, and we know there's some trials that we have that you have to have patience because there's nothing you can do to speed it up or make it different. That it requires, you're either going to run yourself down to nothing or you're going to have patience and prayer and know that the Lord is going to work this out for you. You're in something that you can't change. The writer says, the man who uses every fresh trial in such a way as only to increase his power of holy endurance is unspeakably a gainer among his calamities. And there are a lot of calamities in life if you live long enough. And to be able to, this be said about you, that to increase his power of holy endurance, a gainer by his calamities. So James is saying, if you have the right attitude, if you go toward this, knowing that you have the Lord's help with patience and endurance, you're gonna come out higher than you were before. And anytime you all, if you have anything to add, speak up. There's a lot to be said for this lesson. It says, but let patience have a perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. And the writer says here, we dare never forget that holiness is the highest goal of Christian maturity. So, we're working toward this goal to be able to withstand these trials without losing holiness. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we've talked about a situation that you have a neighbor that's, plucking at you, that it's hard to get to the other side of this trial. Somebody's smiling without it. Okay, let's start at verse 5. It says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. And because of Angie, I looked up upbraideth, because I kind of could assume what it meant, but I thought, oh, there, look, to find fault or reproach, severely censure. So he's saying, and give to men, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given. So when you ask the Lord for wisdom, he's not going to say, Angie, you should have already had wisdom. You've had plenty of time to get wisdom. He's not going to browbeat us, because if we've lived into 59 and a half years and we have zero wisdom, he's going to respect the fact that we are smart enough that we're going to ask for this wisdom.
Probably too, depending on what kind of wisdom you're asking for. Are you asking for spiritual wisdom, or are you just asking for wisdom to benefit yourself and, with earthly things?
Wisdom in the stock market and yes, and that's a good point. That and he tells us that we have not because we ask not, but we have to ask in line of those things, not that we know all the horses to pick at Keeneland and make you wise and know how to read. That's not particularly something that's going to benefit us in the long run. It says we all naturally lack wisdom, and a thoughtful man realizes this lack most thoroughly in the time of trial. So there comes times that maybe you, as a natural person, we don't have as much wisdom as we think when it comes down and the rubber hits the road. And there's a lot of areas of things that happen that we're not always wise. I know, I guess especially my dad, it seemed like, anything that would happen, I'd call and say, oh, Dad, what about this? That, as you mature and grow, that you do grow wisdom, and you learn a lot of things the hard way, of course, but it's something that says that we all naturally lack wisdom. And the lesson writer says he is ready to bestow wisdom at all times, and especially in the day of trials. He wants to impart to every devout sufferer a wealth of holy patience and of spiritual joy. So, when we ask for this wisdom, he wants us to have the wisdom and to learn from these things and to grow. And I have written it further down in here too. Everything is, if you look at this stuff and relate it personally to your family, to if you're a parent, if you have a child, or if you have a niece or a nephew or somebody in your family that you have been kind of a mentor to, that, if they ask for wisdom and ask our opinion on stuff, are we gonna hold it back from them? No. You want them to be able to flourish and to learn, and if they're willing to listen and you can help them to move through a situation, you're not gonna hold that back from them, and neither is our Heavenly Father. 6, it says, but let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. And, I've seen people like that, and I've probably been a person like that. I might go to church here for a while, and I don't hear what I want, and I might change and do something else and go back and forth. And I wanted to read you in this book. I thought it was real good how it relates it to be driven like, and waves are just real. You don't know when they're coming. You don't know how hard. And this is comparing us to a wave. It says, to be sometimes lifted up by faith. So you're on a real high. We've heard something that, I really tell you. And then thrown down again by distrust. So then something comes during the middle of your week and it's like, oh no, that service, and then now you're not believing, and your wave has gone over here. It says to mount sometimes toward the heavens with an intention to secure glory and honor and immortality, and then to sink again in seeking the ease of the body or the enjoyments of this world. So you've gone up again and you've gone down again. It says this is very fitly and elegantly compared to a wave of the sea that rises and falls, swells and sinks, just as the wind tosses it higher and lower, this way or this. Such a distrustful, shifting, unsettled person is not likely to value a favor from God as he should do, and therefore cannot expect to receive it. So, if we're this person that's up and down, and we ask the Lord, for this, please give me wisdom, what are we likely to do with it? He gives us the wisdom and it's all good, and the next trial comes along. Oh Lord, help me. It's just a person that you're not. Yes, you're not going to use his joy. You're going to ride the waves. Yeah.
When you get the waves, it's not a crash. You're going up and down, you're not just saying flat.
Right. And and life's going to be waves, and there's going to be things coming against us. It says, in asking for divine and heavenly wisdom, we are never likely to prevail if we have not a heart to prize it above rubies and the greatest things in the world. So if you gain that wisdom and then you squander it, why would we expect the Lord to keep giving and giving to us when, that helped for a minute, and I'm going to take over the helm now again.
You have wisdom, we don't use it for not.
Right. And you're kind of real wishy-washy on what you do. It says, but let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavers is like a sea driven with the winds and tossed. For let not that man think that he will receive anything from God. So, why would you give it away? It's of no benefit to him. He has it one day, but as soon as that day is over, we can compare that back to the Israelites who we talked about on many occasions, saw the sea parted in front of them, saw that they were taken care of in the desert, but yet the minute Moses went up into the mountain, let's melt down the golden calf and make us an idol like they had in Egypt. And they, as we studied last week, that generation potentially paid for that because they never saw the promised land. They didn't believe it. They wavered. And when he was sending them water and food in the desert, they cried because they wanted onions and leeks. And let us go back to Egypt and be servants again. So, we had good food, at least when we were doing that. So they're perfect examples of wave. And throughout the Old Testament, we see where they followed the Lord and they didn't Right, and that's why they're dispersed throughout the country now, because they have done that. And it says, a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. And a double-minded man, says the word here is applicable to a man who has no settled principles, who is controlled by passion, influenced by popular feeling, who is now inclined to one opinion or course of conduct and now to another. So somebody that you, one day he's high on the mountain and the other day he's, there's something really great out here he's found and he forgets all his wisdom. He goes after that, but tomorrow, my mother used to say, like 2 faces of a courthouse clock. He tries to live with one foot in heaven and 1 foot on the earth. And we know, that a man's only going to love one master, that you can't dabble in one and dabble in the other. Okay, verse 9, it says, let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted, but the rich in that he is made low, because as the flower of grass he shall pass. I'll go ahead and read 11. It says, for the sun is no sooner risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth, and the grace of the passion of it perisheth. So also shall the rich man fade in his ways. And I always remember Brother Bowman used to tell us that you never saw a hearse with a trailer behind it carrying somebody's stuff to the, it's gone, it perishes. And we noticed when I was looking up last night, there are several instances in the Bible that the Lord is compared to the grass of the fields or the flower that comes up, because that's something we can relate to. And how beautiful, you look at all the pear trees right now, it's what I tell my daughter, how can you miss the seasons? and how beautiful it is right now, and everything's in such beautiful bloom. But we know once summer comes, a lot of this stuff is going to die down, and there's a season for grass to grow and flourish. And he's comparing this to the rich, that you may have your favor on this earth, but you're not going to take it with you. But not saying that rich is not good. That he likes for his people to flourish and do good. And Buford, I think, even said last week, we talked about, for the love of money is the root of all evil, and everybody's like, God don't want us to have a penny, he wants us to be penny. And that's not, it's the love. When you take, and it doesn't have to be money, it can be anything. If you are so invested in something in this earth, that, that's what he's trying to sell us. It's not going to last. It's going to fade and be gone. Don't waste your time on it, because you bet on something that he is telling us. But the rich, and that he's made low, because as the flower of the grass, he shall pass away. So that these riches and these things that you can acquire on the earth, he gives them to us for good. I was listening to TV the other day, and somebody was preaching about riches, and they were like, the more wealth is given, you have more ability to help others as you're given, and to not, keep all these riches. And sometimes I think of, you see commercials on TV, and it's movie stars wanting the Shriners Hospital or something to give money. And I always can't help but wonder, because they are rich and have been given a lot, have you charged Shriners Hospital $1 million to make this commercial for them? Are you somebody that's willing to give of what all you have to these people? And that's a question, too much, who much is given, much is expected also. So even in not, everything is not related to money. There's a lot that the Lord has given gifts to people that he expects them to, to bless and to share everything we have, every gift we have. Some people's gift is that they've been given money and they're able to do more stuff for people. because of their capability.
That goes with the wisdom, with the wisdom, if you do get those riches or whatever, are you smart enough to invest it in what's really needed to be invested
And not
in?
go gamble it
Yeah.
away or something that you can do. It says worldly wealth is a withering thing. A flower fades before the heat of the scorching sun, so shall the rich man fade in his ways, his projects, counsels, and management for this world. So it's not the money, and it's not just because you're rich, you're gonna pay that, it's not the wealth per se, but it's how you handle it, how you see it in terms of, is it the most important? And I think Buford maybe preached last week, or somebody maybe even said something, I don't remember, but about somebody that works more and more and more to try to get wealthy. And I saw somebody on Facebook the other day, somebody had put, they were putting like, if you had it to do all over again, would you pick your mother to be your earthly mother again? And would you pick your father to be your father? And somebody made a comment of, not necessarily, because my father didn't spend a lot of time and wasn't there. So, you can work your life away and be rich monetarily, but you can also leave your family while doing this. And have you gained anything by choosing to work 7 days a week? And, they might be living well, but they don't have a dad. And given the choice, they might say what this person is, no, he's gone working all the time. And so you haven't gained by that.
Rhonda, you was talking about the giving. I can look back over several years, all my married life, after we were saved. Lord would speak to Charles about giving somebody something. And an out would come in my mind. And he'd say, well, what do you think about it? We'd discuss a little bit. And he'd say, well, I feel like this much. And it was the same thing that the Lord told me. Different, many times that happened. But the Lord, that's where his wisdom comes in. He knows who needs it and who don't.
Right.
And he knows all about it. We just leave it in his hands, and anything in our life. I've had him refresh me on things just by myself now. And that's the word, just need to trust him, because we don't know what's all out there.
Yeah.
But he does. And he knows the situation and what needs to be done. And he lets us know if we're open-hearted. He'll show us what he wants us to do. I've had the experiences personally, different things. Not only good, but different things, especially since Charlie's been on. So I know he's taking care of it. Of course, he always did, but he's double now.
And like you say, when you were saying that, I was thinking of a situation with the church. I don't know if Eddie probably was on the board at the time, but it had been a really hard year for the church, and a lot had happened, and we were struggling to make bills. And because of that, we hadn't been paying like our dues to the Nazarene mission. We just couldn't, and so that was the thing that that we could get by, that we didn't have to pay. And the church year is like April 30 through April 30. We were several months behind on it, and the Lord talked about it and decided that that was a part of our mission, that this church was to be a part of the global mission, to put in money for mission work overseas and to pay those things that we as a church were committed to pay. To get caught up, it took almost everything we had in the bank account, because somebody said, we are bound to those duties as a church. That's kind of like our tithing as individuals, that we are bound to do this and to help out in this mission, pay it. And it's a treasure on there. It's like, okay, so I'm writing out a check for almost every penny the church has in the budget to get us caught up and to pay. And we paid it, and we wiped out the account, but the Lord always provides. There, we had, the next month come, bill come, and the things that we had to pay that we couldn't say, we can't pay on this month. And I don't know that there's been a time since that point. I know there hasn't, we've always been able to pay, we've always kept our budget. But it was a time that you had to faith, that the Lord is gonna take care of this, and he did. And like I say, signing on the checks is kind of scary, and at the minute it's like, okay, we'll do this. But it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. Like I said, we never once have had an issue with that since then.
We always surprised what he would do. He always provides,
Yes.
And
maybe not the big wish things, the Jeep Wagoneer that's $90,000, because we don't do that, because then we can't afford the upkeep on it after we get, so he does provide us with what we need and to prosper. We talked about blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. And I don't know about you all, but the crowns that were promised always intrigue me, and I can't wait. I mean, I don't know if you all, but sometimes when I'm by myself and just sit and imagine what heaven's like, and to be given these things. And I had right and promised to them that love him. So we have to be tested during this life if we're not, and I thought about, says every man in this life is in a state of temptation or trial. In this state, he is a candidate for another and a better world. It is only love to God that can enable a man to endure the trials of life. And I was thinking about a child. We try to protect our children as much as we can from the world. But if we protect them so much that we never, if something comes, don't worry about that, I'll take care of that. You just go in your room and play. I know you're 30 years old, but I'll take care of it. What's that child going to become? Somebody that can't handle anything. I mean, they really are. Right. So, part of our life and enduring is so that we can endure and go on and acquire wisdom as we go. We are going to be given people along our path that we can mentor and help to get through these things. So protection against everything is not the best thing you can do for somebody, because
Rhonda yells at me, said, "Oh, you're so naked for that." I'll tell her, I got a vaccine, that's all I got.
But they got to take over from there, yeah. Verse 13 says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any." So, he doesn't tempt us, but he does allow us to have these temptations. And that's back in line with our children. We allow them to go. You could have said, "Christian, I've been in the Marines for you. You can't go and be in the Marines now. I've taken care of that." He's going to be a different man when he comes home. He's going to be, a man that can take care of himself, a family at some point, and move on. And that's what the Lord is saying here. In the book, it says, he will not and cannot solicit men towards what is opposed to his own nature. So he's not going to put anything on us. He tries and tests men, but he does not tempt them. He does not cause sin. He simply permits it. And we've talked about that he hasn't made us robots. He doesn't make us move this way and that. He doesn't make us go through a temptation as he would want us to go. He allows us to come to that crossroad and make that choice. If we stop to ask him for his help, oh yes, he'll give it to us. But he will not force us one way or the other. And And I think too, I've talked to y'all about this, when in Genesis, it says he makes man in his own likeness. And you know, and we say when we see him, you know, okay, it's gonna be real surprising. But I think part of his likeness is that he does give us that free will, that he didn't make robots, that he didn't want to narrow us down into these thoughtless person that has not a choice. But he's given us this life to make that choice for him, and he will help us if we ask him. And you know, if we don't ask him, he's not going to force the help. It's like, no, Neil, you have to take care of those kids till they're 75 and do that. It says in 14, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. So who does that sound like it's the blame is on? He's intended of his own, you know, he didn't take us in the porn site video, he didn't Facebook or internet or whatever, I don't know, wherever
Your own action.
Yes.
Your own action.
Yes, and you know, and it was talking about in the lesson, when that first happens and you say, and on the internet, I know she'll probably remember, the state had money or something and they gave free internet to this program at work, that people that came for the day. And they got internet service free, and they gave them a computer and everything. Well, not everybody was computer savvy on how to do it. And you know, when you don't even have to push anything wrong, that sometimes this site will pop up and it's like, oh, what's that? I wasn't looking for that, but let me see. And you start getting into some sites that's kind of like a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. But, you know, the writers here is telling us, as soon as we see that thing, and we know it at the first second, whether it's wrong or right, we know it. Whether we admit it or whether we have said, oh, that, you know, I've got to clear this computer out and start. Because once that computer started doing that, you know, no matter what you look at, it's going to lead you to that site. And I think maybe they even had to clear them or I forget what happened, but it's something. But when we start those things, if we don't check it at the beginning, I'll go a little bit, and then you find yourself in quicksand up to your neck, and you can't crawl out of it. So, you know, he's telling us, as soon as these things start, check them. You know, if you see a man that I don't know, post office or something, and you think, well, I really like him, I believe I'll go back and take my mail back every day, so I can talk to him in a few minutes. And you're married, you know, that first thought that comes in your mind, you need to swish it out, because that's the beginning. It's just such a small thing that can turn into a big snowball if you know, keep reasoning in a way that's not good. I can handle that. I'm better than that. You know, most of us truly are. 15, it says, then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. So these things grow and grow and grow until we've separated ourselves from God, and there's only one path for our life then, because we have chosen by our own means. The Lord didn't make us stop. We had at every point before death, you know, we have a choice. He gives us a choice to do that. We don't always know how long we have, so make that choice while it's available. And it says, whenever the mind receives and cherishes error. So see, it's something you don't think about cherishing. It says evil practice follows.
This is to say Walmart. Walmart, when they take like a grocery cart and then they'll switch everything up in it. Making you you went to this one aisle to get a certain thing, and now it's got something different in there, so I mean, what they're doing, they're making you look harder, and then you're looking and finding different stuff in there, where you can't do.
Cookies, candies, and cakes. And the stuff, yeah, I mean, that is a perfect, and the stuff up by the checkout aisle, they don't put on spinach peanuts.
No.
But, yeah, they put the things that they know tempt you and candy bars and more candy
I
bars.
mean,
They call that merchandise. Yeah, yeah. And like you say, you know, the bread aisle is now something else that you go down there and buy and extra stuff. So, yeah, and that is part of temptation. It's set up pretty.
And that's why they don't put the milk in the bag. That way you can go through everything to get the milk.
True, because that, yeah, the one thing you might, you know, that mix is neat or whatever. I always used to play when my daughter was real little, this is probably dirty, but playing on make cards, and I would always stick her up like that, or make her think that I would never do that, so she would draw it, but we're kind of like that. All right, well, thank you all this morning.
That's